Hey y'all, we wanted to invite you to partner with us in this ministry. Preachers Hour needs your support.
In order to make more and better content, we need you, yes, you listening to this right now, to become a patron.
Choose the tier that best fits your preferences and help us make theology for our context.
Thanks and enjoy this episode.
What is up, everybody? Welcome back to Preachers Hour. This is take two of this episode.
Oh, we talked
You
about
guys
this?
don't know about that, but we do. I'm Jeff Copeland, one of your hosts. I'm joined by
What's going on, guys? This is John Drodos.
John Drodos, guys. This is episode 108 and 109.
Shout
these
out.
two. And we have an amazing guest who I hyped up in the previous take. I'm going to do it again. Okay.
They need to hear it.
They need
The
to
people
hear
need to hear it.
Okay. So, guys, we are joined by one of my classmates who was a New Testament student.
One
at
of my
FPU,
past classmates.
one of
I
John's
guess.
past
Yeah.
classmates. We just had him last semester.
Yep.
The smartest person in the seminary at Fresno Pacific. If he's not the smartest, he's top 3,
Yep.
and he's not 3 or 2.
Yep.
I'll let you figure out which number he is. This is Yuya Ono, our
Yuya.
very own. Okay, he's awesome. He was doing a great job telling his story in the first take.
Yep.
So we're gonna pick up right then and
But
there.
we're good now, right?
Yes, we are good. Everything should be
Here we go.
recorded.
You guys are going to hear this one, so don't even
Yes.
worry about
Yeah,
what we're
don't worry
talking
about what you
about.
missed. If you missed out, I feel bad for you, but we got some good stuff. So Yuya's going to be talking to us today, about the American church from an outside perspective. So Yuya, as you were saying in the first take, I'll help you out. I can do it for you because I don't want you to have to repeat yourself too much. So Yuya is from Japan, right? And he's an international student. He became a Christian before he came to the United States, right? So he's coming into the American church already a Christian, but from the outside, right? So he's going to be able to give like a fresh perspective on, good things, maybe areas for improvement.
Let's use that language.
You know what I'm
We're
saying?
not here to bash.
We're not going to, as we said in the first take, we're not going to bash the American church, okay? There's plenty of other podcasts that do that. This is
We
not gonna
can
be
maybe
one of them.
help you out find those. I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe, probably not.
You just Google and you'll find them. I don't know. So, Yuya, you can start by just telling us again, like your experience. You can tell as much as you've already said before as you want to. Don't feel like you got to say the whole thing again. But just like basically, how did you become a Christian?
Yeah.
You said some really cool stuff about the context of Japan, the fact that Christians are less than 1% of the population in total, no matter what denomination, all of them together are under 1%. So you're looking at it like an endangered species.
That's true.
Okay, him and
That's
his wife.
a really good way to put it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, like, just kind of explaining, you were talking about like the history of like why Japan is so kind of adverse to not only Christianity sounding, but just like religion, organized religion as a whole.
Yeah.
I'll let you pick up wherever you feel like picking up, man.
Right. So, yeah, as Jeff said, only less than 1% of population is Christian. And I was also born into this family. My parents would say that they're Buddhist, but they don't practice it on every day. The only occasion I practiced, in a way, Buddhism was when my grandparents died. We had a funeral service in a Buddhist way.
I've actually been to a Buddhist funeral once. It was
cool.
Very interesting. One of my best friends, his dad passed away out of nowhere. He's Japanese. He's himself is half Japanese. His dad is full Japanese.
Right.
And so it was actually the Buddhist temple, like
Yeah.
There's not
Running
one too
down.
far from here.
yeah, it was over there. It was a very, very cool like experience. Obviously it was a somber one, but I don't know what you would call it, but the monk got up. I don't know if you would call him a monk, but he kind of gave what would be like a
eulogy,
like
to
a
certain
sermon
extent?
type
Okay.
of thing.
Oh, was it
just,
sermon?
He was just explaining, like, he talked about like reincarnation and a couple different things. So it was a very interesting experience. Like it wasn't even that long. It was maybe 5 or 6 years ago. So, but anyway, I'll let you continue.
Yeah. So that's the only occasion where my parents practice. Well, I myself practice Buddhism, but we also have Shintoism in Japan, which is more like animistic, less systematic than like Buddhism. And we have this tradition of going to a Shinto shrine on the very first day of the year. That's the occasion where when you go to the Shinto shrine and pray to whatever god there is. Like they have different responsibilities. It's really like a Greek like
each
mythology.
thing has its own
Yeah.
God
Some
behind
god is
it.
responsible for like a safe birth.
So if you're in
Whereas-
need of something, go to this god. If you
Yeah.
need, I don't know, health,
Mhm.
help
I mean,
with
it's very Eastern. So it's similar to like
pregnancy, yeah.
Hinduism. Or,
Yeah. That's exactly how it is. So yeah, and my parents might say they're Buddhist, or they could even say that they are non-religious. That's a translation of Japanese word. So it sounds like they're not religious, but the meaning is that they are religious. They're afraid of like something unseen
Yeah,
powers,
yeah.
but they have no like affiliation with a specific religion or tradition or like religious organization. That's the point. And I was kind of born into that kind of family. I was more religious, I would say, than my parents. What I was sharing with them in the first take was, so I was living in this city right next to Hiroshima, and you might know the name Hiroshima. It's a historical place, one of two cities that experienced atomic bomb during the World War II. And we would go to a school trip to Hiroshima and listen to the story of survivors. And that was so horrific. Yeah, it was really scary, and we had to watch movies on the atomic bomb, and we actually saw the actual pictures of the survivors, or even maybe the dead bodies. I didn't really want to recognize that as a dead body, but I'm sure now it was a dead body, and that was a picture, and that was when I was like 10 years old. And then around the same time, we heard lots of news about our neighbor nation, North Korea, launching lots of missiles.
Yeah.
And the missiles fell into like a
Sea of
sea
Japan.
right beside Japan. And that was actually horrifying as well. In my head, what I learned in Hiroshima and this missile thing kind of came together. And that thing might happen in the near future. And my family will be like destroyed, or my parents, my friends, and I myself will be destroyed. So I started to have this fear for death, or not just for my own death, but the death of my parents or friends. And
so you said you were like, I was looking for like hope and like something bigger,
bigger
than us, that could
than
protect us.
That's true. And I didn't have the word back then, but I was kind of starting to seek God, not knowing that it was like, I don't know what kind of God it is, but
just something bigger than yourself,
something
that had
bigger.
more control than what it seemed like was fleeting from
that's
what you were
true.
experiencing at the time.
Okay.
I have so many history questions,
Well,
but
can
I can't
ask
ask them now.
Well, can I ask one question?
Go
Actually,
ahead.
I'm just curious, and
Okay.
this might turn off some people who's listening to this. I don't really care. So when you were kind of going, like we're being shown these different things, right? Whether it be Hiroshima kind of attacks and whatnot, what was your kind of perspective of Americans actually during that time growing up?
Question.
I'm just curious. I know this is supposed to be like a theology podcast, but I think that's really interesting.
Well, I think
Right.
to add on to that question, Christianity came to Japan from Americans. So it's like, I think that plays a huge part when trying to receive this religion from the people that attacked us in this horrific way.
Colonizer,
Yeah,
that kind of
so
idea.
I
behind
think
it,
that's very connected. I'd love to hear your answer on that.
I think we got a mixed feeling about the U.S. Well, in general. On the one hand, we were destroyed by the atomic bomb and the other stuff, but people recognize that we are, in a way, the one who started the war, like Pearl Harbor. And so we cannot pretend that we are the victim. Well, we have to recognize that the fact that we were involved in many horrendous things. And at the same time, people are fascinated by the Hollywood movies.
That's true.
And I think that plays a bigger role in a Japanese mind, considering the conception of American people. So when we talk about war, we can be really critical of the U.S. Nation, but we don't really talk about war in these days, right? We only talk about like pop culture or movies, music.
Yeah.
So back then, I didn't really think deep about that, but I already liked Star Wars, other like movies, Hollywood movies. So I didn't really hate Americans, but just, well, it was a historical event, and my ancestors suffered. But that was just it.
I see. Yeah, no, I appreciate you sharing that.
That's awesome.
So going back to your story though,
So you said you got to high school junior year.
Yeah. Junior year.
Pick us up there, bro.
Right. So well, before going to that, I have to share this thing about my fear for like religious
that's right.
organizations. It was when I was,
which I've never heard of this.
Oh, really?
And as a historical I want to go back and research. You said 1995.
1995.
I've never heard about this.
It was in 1995 when I was born. There was like a terrorism attack by cultic religious people. And some of the members spread toxic gas in the train, and lots of people were killed. And still today, some people are suffering from the damage that they had. And that news went viral, of course, all over Japan. So people kind of shared this fear against religion and systematic organized religion. And I, of course, shared that story because my parents always told me that it was when you were born. My parents were in Tokyo, and that news happened, and it was crazy. So I always heard the story. And I had this understanding that, wow, religion is really scary, driving people crazy and makes people kill. So that was the understanding that I had about religion. But in my personal level, I was kind of religious, seeking God or spiritual thing. So I was in a dilemma or a conflicted situation. And so when I was a junior in high school, right before I entered university, I used to talk to this teacher. She was a native English speaker, and she was helping me study English deeper. And in the spring break, which is right before I entered university, she suggested to me that if you want to continue studying English until you go into university, I suggest that you talk to these people who are missionaries. And the thing was, back then was she was living in this apartment mainly for like foreign people.
Okay.
So she knew these missionary couple.
Gotcha.
The thing was, so when she got sick, she said that this missionary couple kind of helped her survive the situation.
Come on,
so
the church.
Come
on, people really actually practicing Christianity.
Exactly.
Sorry, go ahead.
That's
cool. So she knew that these people can be trusted.
Nice.
So that's the reason why she introduced them to me.
Wow.
And what was fascinating was that she herself was not a Christian. She said back then she was agnostic.
Okay.
Like she doesn't deny the existence of God, but she wasn't sure. So in retrospect, if she was a Christian back then, and if she tried to,
you would have been like, no.
Yeah, it's a religious.
Yeah.
I'm like introduced into like a religious cult or whatever.
I see.
So God had to like, okay, let me. That's incredible.
Yeah, I would have said no,
Right.
but because she said that I'm not a Christian and I don't go to church, but I know these good people, and you can trust them.
All right, cool.
So I was like, oh, that's
awesome.
great.
Yeah.
So I would like to put it like I was evangelized by agnostic person.
Wow.
And that's how God used people.
Come on.
God has lots of like sense of humor.
Come on. Yes, he does. That's hilarious.
And
okay,
then
cool. So continue. Yeah.
And then I just Googled, and then I found, well, there was Google when I was like a junior in high school. I'm relatively young. Anyway,
You're the same as John.
Yeah.
I'm the old person here. So Google, you say.
Google's around.
I remember before Google goes around. But anyway.
Right. And then I found a church pretty close to my house.
Yeah.
It's amazing because I'm from a really rural part of Japan. Like it's hard to compare the how big the city is from the US perspective and Japanese perspective, but my city didn't, it's not city even, it's a town.
Okay.
And it didn't have like a station or a big mall.
Gotcha.
There were some small supermarkets.
So you had to
just
go
like
to
that.
Hiroshima. Was that the closest big city?
The closest biggest city.
So this is kind of off topic, but I know that between Nagasaki and Hiroshima, I forget which one of them they actually had the large population of Christians.
Right, it was in Nagasaki.
Yeah, which is like you guys bombed the Christians.
Right.
In Japan, the one city you picked.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, sorry.
Yeah, that's really strange. I'd like to do
come on,
some
guys.
study on that.
American. Crazy.
Yeah.
Okay,
Anyway.
so cool. So Hiroshima, you had to go there to get like any type of place you want to go, airport.
Yeah.
train
Airport,
station, stuff
entertainment.
Like that. Okay.
But in this small town I was born into, there was one church, very small church. started by a missionary from the U.S.
Okay.
Yeah.
So these missionaries are, of course, from the U.S., so they speak English. And I made a phone call. Back then, I was not really confident or fluent in English, so I just kind of struggled. And I said, I'd like to do some English practice. And they said, oh, you're welcome. And I was invited to the church. And then what I did then was to open the Bible, which I didn't really expect. But
You gotta learn English. This
yeah. But because I had a history of kind of searching for some divine being or something great that would protect us from like misery or destruction. Then I read the Bible, the Genesis 1, and then I was introduced to this idea of God who created heaven and earth and sustained life through generous protection. And because of my like searching for this God, I was not hesitant to accept this as the creator God.
Okay.
Well, back then I didn't really understand the like atonement or the crucifixion or Jesus, but the God I just accepted back then was the creator God who will protect us from destruction or like anxiety.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then I moved on to college, and I moved to like big city where I started going to church regularly. And then I learned about like Jesus and the other stuff. And then I got baptized when I was 19, 20 years old.
How was that received by your family at that time?
Yeah, that's a good question. That's a really good question. Well, when I said to them that I would be a Christian, they said, "Oh, that's fine. I don't know. I think that's fine." Then when I said to them, "I will be baptized," that's when they got like, "What is that?
Huh.
You're gonna be belong to like a religious organization, or you're gonna be something different?" And what they feared was, I think, the fear that we shared as like Japanese people against organized religion. So I had to talk to them like the meaning of baptism, and that I made sure that I will not be destructive person like these people in the past. I will not cut a tie from you. And that was something, I had to persuade them into.
And you were young. They're like, man, you're a young
true.
kid. You can't be doing this. Send you guys to university.
Right.
Crazy.
Well, I think that's like a struggle. Lots of young newborn Christian experience in Japan. I hear stories like how their parents kind of cut their tie from them because they said that they would follow Jesus.
Yeah.
So they had to like try very hard to amend the relationship. So that's one of the issues or struggle that we experience. So
I think that's really interesting, kind of even that thought, if I could put a pin in it for just a second, in the sense of there is a different kind of understanding or even like a view of what it means to be baptized or to become a Christian. Right. And now I emphasize and I recognize your parents probably had the negative connotations underneath. I'm really fearful that he's joining a cult, which is funny. Like a lot of young people give their life to Jesus and like their family don't like they automatically think like Jamestown and like in the US at least. But then there's a different kind of even aspect that I don't know us who kind of swim in the water of Christianity here in the States really understand of like when you are really beginning to actually like, I'm going to follow Jesus, I'm going to get baptized. Like there's a cost attached to it. And that might even mean like a true isolation from one's own like upbringing community. But I don't know. I think for me, I just keep coming back to like, it's almost seems like this is a real commitment that's being made. It's not just like this inward spirituality. I think that's kind of like what you're hitting on. And I think even
it's not a private thing. Because in those Eastern cultures, like I think of like Christians in India, where like if you become a Christian, like you are cut off from, your whole family, your whole like town, your neighborhood. You can't live. You can't, because no one's gonna hire you to work. Like you're giving up a lot to become a Christian versus here it's like you want to be a Christian, like we don't like Christians, but that's fine. Whatever. Like it's not the same like social weight.
Right? And I think and I don't know if that's necessarily a positive thing though either though, like for us to not understand the weight of that. I'm grateful that we don't have to
it's nice to
cut
have
off from our family.
like I can still make money, I can still provide, but like
I wonder though how much we
the
lose
level
out
of like I'm committed to following like the disciples when they're like we've given up everything to follow you, right? that level of commitment, I think I agree with you. I think it's lacking here. And we kind of have the issue that Japan has with Buddhism. We have cultural Christianity here, where it's like, oh, everyone's Christian. Of course I'm a Christian. I grew up in church or whatever. Like, there's churches all around my house. And yeah, I've been to, but you're like, it's just more just a name only. Right. So it's weird here if you're like really actually committed to following Jesus. It's kind of like, you're a little strange. Okay. So anything else you wanted to share from your background? I guess one thing I wanted to know was like, how did you go from you go to this church, meet the missionaries to learn English, to getting baptized? Like, like what clicked for you to be like, you know what?
This is the truth.
I'm
following
this.
this. Yeah.
Right. Well, honestly, I didn't experience like a dramatic conversion that some might.
Me neither.
I grew up in church. It was just like, okay, yeah, I'm a Christian.
Well, honestly, it's something that I'm not really proud of, like saying this, but I just kind of accepted this is the way, like how Christians operate. And then it was just only gradually that I started to understand the meaning of the decision that I made. Okay. Like when I decided to get baptized, it was just, okay, becoming a Christian meaning getting baptized, so I will do it. And then I talked to my parents and they got the opposition from them. Oh, it's a kind of cost of discipleship or. Okay. And then, well, something else I want to share was when my grandparents died, we had a family Buddhist funeral, and I was back in my hometown and attended this funeral. But what I was learning back then, I was told by a Japanese pastor back then, was it's not really a Christian way to attend the Buddhist funeral service is to refuse some kind of religious act. There is this way of showing respect to the deceased spirit by burning incense. Right. That's the practice that lots of people do in Japan. And I had a really huge struggle doing that. Oh gosh. Before attending that funeral service, I talked to my mother that because I'm a Christian, I'm not participating in this religious act. And she was very sad that, so you don't have any respect for the deceased grandmother? And I was like, that's tough, and I still don't have an easy answer for that decision. But at that time, I refused to do it. Wow. And instead, I didn't know really what to do. So I just made a cross in front of me. And that was observed by a Buddhist monk then. And then later, I really wanted to like hide myself because they were like,
I want to hide myself.
You come up in here, crucifixion. what are you doing?
Hearing the story, I want to hide myself.
Yeah. So there were not only my parents but my relatives who didn't know that I was a Christian. So they just thought that I was attending this funeral just as they do to show respect for my deceased grandmother. And then this Buddhist monk showed up, and later, after the service is over, he shared some kind of like memory with our grandmother, because the Buddhist monk knew the grandmother very well. And then after that, he kind of pointed out that I noticed that there is someone who made a great move. He actually commended me for doing that.
That's amazing.
Yeah, I appreciate that, but I didn't want him to say that because it was in front of my parents.
They're like, wait, what?
What? But nobody said anything about that. But I feel that I still struggle of my identity as a only one Christian within my entire family relatives.
So can we Steven, can I ask a couple questions even on that as well? So today, and I think a lot of Americans even struggle with this, as I think more so black and brown people, let's put it that way, in the sense who have ties actually, are trying to discover ties that have been taken from them, right? And so it's this trying to cultivate an identity of who am I? Am I what my ancestors before me were? And that's what I should be proud in, and I should live these things out, whether it be traditions, religions, practices, whatever aspect of that culture. Or is it I'm doing something new and there's a syncretism, what they would call a mixture between these two, or multiple things. And so for you, how has that been trying to understand, establish or during that time, establish a new identity of I'm a Jesus follower, but I'm also very ingrained in this cultural thing. I can't just sit aside, and ignore.
I have a follow-up question. I'll let you answer his first one.
Well, that's still back then it was difficult. Even today, it's really difficult.
Yeah.
And we took the same course like last semester. It was about global Christian theologies, and we learned the danger of syncretism as well.
Yeah.
So I'm still trying to find a way to respect my culture, my people, our people, at the same time being faithful to the way of Jesus.
Yeah.
And so I'm still in the like a middle of journey of
Sure.
finding the right way, the way that God would say, that's fine, that's good. So yeah, at this point, I cannot really answer that question. I'm so sorry.
That's valid. No.
Yeah,
I appreciate your honesty.
Yeah.
So my follow-up question to that would be, how difficult is it to now be removed from Japan to be in America? And I'm assuming that you go to a church that's predominantly like, white or whatever.
What kind of what denomination
yeah.
was it that the missionaries are a part of?
That's a good question.
It was more, the theology was more like very traditional American,
So like
evangelical.
Okay.
Protestantism.
Yeah.
Okay.
They were pretty much strongly against liberal theologies.
Okay.
They're
So
conservative and
conservative. Yeah.
They were white.
They were white. Yeah.
Yeah. So then now you're Mennonite.
Yeah, Mennonite.
Okay.
Wait, that's what you actually are. Like, you've.
Yeah.
I didn't know.
Well, from
that.
what I know, your wife was Mennonite first.
Exactly. Yeah.
And then she helped you.
Shout out. She is here right now also as well.
Yeah, she's in the
Right.
room, guys. So she helped you go like, man, you should be.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
she was born into a Mennonite family. Her parents are born Christian.
Oh, we
When-
should have
That's,
had her
no, I was
on.
like, wait a minute.
Yeah.
Okay.
So their
in
parents
Japan.
In Japan, their parents were like a first generation Christian.
Whoa.
And so actually she was a rare species.
Yeah,
Rare.
that's-
Yeah,
I'm
I was
like,
like, this is another
that's-
level of
Right.
rare.
Because I'm thinking both of you guys were like the only Christians in your
yeah.
families, but
No.
wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, we have to talk to
So-
her after the break. I don't know. After break, I don't know.
Right.
So,
she
okay,
has been a Christian Mennonite for like entire life, and then
Okay.
when I got married to her, I moved to Mennonite because she was serving as a youth pastor, and she wasn't unable to kind of leave the
Listen,
church.
you're gonna be on the next.
Wait a
podcast.
minute. Yeah, we're gonna get you on
We're gonna
another
have to be
episode.
Right. So that's when back in 2020 that I became a Mennonite,
Okay.
and and then we still go to a
Right.
Mennonite church in town.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So can I ask a question on that? I know.
I didn't get to ask my question. Go
I'm
ahead.
gonna ask it real fast.
Go
So
ahead.
even on that, because we asked Peter, who was a past guest, also on not too long ago, kind of like why is it just because of her? Is why you actually like to be Mennonite, or you chose to be
Oh, that's a
Mennonite, or
good
like
question.
Anabaptism? Peter had a response. I have my own response, even though I wouldn't necessarily.
Yeah, I'm very convinced. I kind of obviously we go to Fresno Pacific University, which is a Mennonite university, Anabaptist.
So you've been brainwashed. No.
I mean, it's not just that. Like, obviously, like I took a class this last semester about the whole Mennonite Anabaptist confession, right? Mennonite Brethren, MB confession, right?
Mm-hmm.
We went through all 18 articles of the confession, like one by
Wow.
one almost, right? And so, obviously, I can't just blanketly agree with everything.
Yeah.
But I'm like, it's very convincing.
Yeah.
Not just that they have a good argument. It's a very positive way to interpret Jesus's mission,
Mm-hmm.
and try to like really be intentional about living it out,
Yeah.
right? So I'm not saying that it's the best and every other
No.
denomination is
I
wrong.
mean, we have Reformed friends.
Yeah,
we have
people
Pentecostal
wrong,
friends.
right?
I have
I mean,
Vineyard friends.
I
keep
can't
going
say
down.
that I am a Anabaptist
No, no,
committed
no.
Mennonite. I'm
Mm.
not. But I'm like, you know what?
A lot
I'm
of
sympathetic.
foundations are
I'm
true,
sympathetic
yeah.
to it, right? So
Mhm.
I think you would kind of say the same thing. John's like a
Yeah,
almost.
I think I'm starting to get
Yeah.
almost there, because I think you guys have to understand even part of my story, and I should have on the
Mhm.
past with Peter's as well. My story was not growing up in the church, and so I've been able to, in a good way, been able to kind of sit down for a season in a lot of different denominations. I guess we could put it that way. So yeah, I've had a season where I was in the highly reformed, conservative. We just talked about what God did in the past, and then I've been in other seasons where it was we are looking at what God is
The
doing
Spirit,
now, right?
yeah.
The Spirit work and act. And so I think in this season, at least, I think, like the thoughts of what Anabaptism kind of helps me to be able to approach Scripture with, that kind of lens has really been helpful, because I think the most important aspect of our faith is the one in which is lived out.
Or the praxis.
Yes, that part of me. So that is my bias even in that. But at the same time, I'm not willing to die on a hill about any of these things, because also God has given me a unique ministry where I get the opportunity to sit across and work with a lot of people who probably we wouldn't necessarily see eye to eye on every single thing theologically, and I'm super comfortable with that. Anyway,
we
I was
realize
just
that we
curious.
have a perspective, not the perspective.
100%.
Right.
So I
What
was
was
just
your
curious
question?
about.
Is that the question? So I can ask
Now
my
you
question?
hijacked our question, Jeff.
I'm
No,
sorry.
I'm
I
joking.
apologize.
No, mine was just like, was there anything like of intent? So like you claim to be like, oh, Mennonite,
Right.
today, right? Or Anabaptist, whatever you want to say. Like, why specifically? Is it just because of you've been adopted in or recruited in? No,
Right. Well, it was
Married
not
in.
just.
married in. There you go.
Well, it was not just because of my wife. Before I got married to my wife, I came to know this pastor via Facebook, because Japanese Christian population is very small. People are really connected on Facebook,
Okay.
even if you don't know that person. And he actually came to study at Fresno Pacific a few years ago. So he's a pastor of Mennonite Brethren conference in Japan. And so he had a really unique perspective on the Bible and on Jesus. And he always talked about how being a Christian is confessing Jesus is Lord. And that was something I never paid attention to in a way.
Yeah.
I didn't even know that Jesus is Lord was in the Bible. It's really strange. I thought Christianity was all about sin and salvation.
So help me
confession.
understand though. Maybe help me even our listeners. So when you say like Jesus is like, what do you expand a little bit more? What do you mean by that?
Right. What he said to me back then, and it's my conviction. One of my convictions right now is that Christians are called to be like a countercultural presence in a society.
Yes.
And I think the key word is anti-empire. Like in the New Testament, where people confess that Caesar is Lord, like the Roman emperor is Lord,
Okay.
and Christians came in and said that Jesus is Lord. He is like a true King of universe. And that the Mennonite pastor, always emphasized that we are called to do and enable by God to have a different perspective than the world.
Yeah, I see what you're saying.
And that was really appealing to me, because I
It's
was
more than just like sin. You're a sinner. You need.
it was more than
Yeah.
that.
You belong
okay.
to a kingdom
Yeah.
that is powerful
Oh,
beyond
okay.
anyone
Exactly.
that's here. Okay.
Okay.
And he also emphasized the importance of community. And he had this church, but he preferred doing the Bible together to like him preaching. He respected doing the Bible study together than like him preaching.
Okay.
And I really liked that. I was really arrogant, I guess, back then. I didn't like to listen to a sermon. I preferred doing the
man.
Bible study with
You like
people.
to interact. And
Yeah.
Sit here and listen to somebody.
That's
talk.
how I
feel
hear
it.
the word from God, and that kind of resonated with me. The emphasis on community as the kingdom people who claim Jesus as Lord, pay ultimate allegiance to God. So yeah, I was drawn to Anabaptist theology through my wife and also through this pastor that I got
That
to
makes
know.
a lot more sense.
Yeah.
Okay, so this will be the last question, and then we'll break, and then we'll pick up with the next episode. So my question originally, before John cut me off, is so obviously, again, you're not in Japan. You're in a different like ethnic surrounding, right? So how is it trying to be a Christian in that situation? And also, like, I'm Japanese, right? Because, you know, we'll probably get into this on the next segment, but like, it's a struggle for African Americans in America who are Christians to, especially if we're not going to a black church, quote unquote, right? So I've been in non-black spaces as a Christian, and you feel this like tension of like, okay, who am I? Because you feel like you're this pressure to like, to be a Christian, I have to be this certain way. I have to like see things this way, which is not necessarily biblical as it is like this is a cultural thing, right? So they'd express it as like this is how you're supposed to follow Jesus, but it's really more of like a cultural expression.
This is what our tradition has always done.
Right. And so it's like hard, okay, like how do I faithfully follow Jesus while still being African American, right? So my question, I guess, is like, how do you wrestle with that? Like, I'm Japanese, there are certain things about me that like I'm not gonna let go of, in my pursuit of Jesus that might look different than the people I'm doing life with, I'm going to church with. Like, I don't even know if I asked the question in that, but like, what's your wrestling with that?
Well, yeah, there are lots of struggles, and one of the things I feel pretty strongly about right now is my relationship with my family, and also Japanese people respect the deceased, like
Right.
parents, grandparents, a lot.
Your ancestors.
Yeah, ancestors. And one of the things that we do is during summer, when people believe that the deceased spirits come back to this realm, we go to a temple and visit the family tomb, and we do some kind of like religious practice. Some people pray to the deceased spirit, but what we do is like wash the tombstone, and that kind of, and also we offer something like, if it can be sake, like a Japanese alcohol, or like flowers.
Delicious, by the way. Sake is really good.
And sake is really good, yeah. And I really like that tradition of like recognizing me as a Japanese have a strong connection with the ancestors. And I always had this feeling that without my parents, my grandparents, my great-grandparents, I wouldn't have existed.
Right.
So I really want to keep this connection with my ancestors. Whereas early missionaries in Japan kind of demanded that we cut the tie from the ancestors, or these practices they called ancestral worship. So I have a struggle with this part, especially because as a Japanese, I want to respect my connection with the ancestors.
Right.
At the same time, is it really like the will of God that I participate in this religious practice? So I'm trying to find a way to
balance that.
To both follow the way of Jesus and respect the tie that I have with my family.
There's got to be a way.
Yeah, I'm listening to you guys, and I'm like, it is been something even of my own self. So I am technically, I forget I'm brown sometimes. I ain't gonna front.
John's
My
mixed with
identity is
all
so
kind of stuff.
mixed, so confusing after a while. But I'm basically majority is like Hungarian and Mexican. Even to the place like on my dad's side, like grandparents, like they only speak Spanish is it, right? And so for me, I've had such a trouble because of many things. Go back and listen to the other episodes. You'll find out what I'm talking about. Because of that kind of like brokenness in my storyline, I wasn't given like a storyline to look back to. Because like I'm looking at you guys and hearing that, and I'm like, that's beautiful. Like to be able to have something that came before you, to know
something
where
bigger
you
than you
came from, right? And it really wasn't actually until maybe a year ago, and I was sitting in a class, I forgot who it was, and someone like spoke it over me, and I was like, wow, that's really actually profound. And it was like the idea of like, so like Hebrews 12:1, like therefore we're surrounded by such a great cloud of witnesses, let us weigh, you know. But it was like that idea that I think
you're part of something.
Yeah, and it was like maybe that was one of the big parts why I became so like Christianity was so appealing for me during the time when again I was trying to form my identity, and over the years if I continued to try to do that, it was because I finally was given something, a storyline, a narrative to actually place myself back into, and I was like, okay, I know my people.
Yeah, that's good.
And they don't look like me, and they don't necessarily will speak the same dialect as me, and they won't have a beard like Jeff or something like that. But then that's also why I'm able to look at this like table right here, and I'm like, that's brother, sister.
Right. Yeah.
And so that's where I continue. Now again, I still say, I'm not saying to continue to or get rid of like what you guys just said,
right,
but for me that was helpful for me, and I wish I had something like that
bro, as a descendant of slaves, like I'm very jealous of someone like Yuya, who has like this very set culture that he can look back generations, or even like our pastor Patient, who's Congolese, like he can go back
tribe and everything
10 12 generations, like he knows like I wish I had that. I'm a mixture of, again, slaves who were taken from Africa, Native Americans who owned slaves and kind of married in there, and then slave owners who raped their slaves. I'm a mixture of all of that. I can only go back to like great grandparents, and that's kind of it. And it's just like I wish I had that. So like you said, like when you were just talking right now, you were speaking to my soul. I'm like, you're right. I am a part of something that is bigger than me, ancestor wise. I can look back. I'm a part of this family. Right. So he was preaching, John.
Yeah. Let's cut there for now.
Yeah, that's a good place to end. So this will be the end of this episode. That we'll pick up with another episode. You guys will be seeing it in like 2 weeks. So we'll see you guys on the next one.
Later.